Blah Blah Show number 6 in your speakers. Today's guest is Henry and the Invisibles, bringing his pioneering one-man funk experience to the Blah Blah Show. And just for the record, all music played on the Blah Blah Show for copyright reasons is either by me, my family band, The Printers, or by the guest artists who have thankfully granted their permission. Now, with that out of the way, a little music news. Gibson Guitars is declaring bankruptcy. USA Today reported Gibson, which also has Baldwin pianos, Wurlitzer organs, and other well-known brands, said that it expects to survive its Chapter 11 bankruptcy reorganization because of the support it expects from key creditors. As more popular music has been made with computers, international guitar sales began to slip, creating a challenge for larger manufacturers and retailers like Gibson. In response, Gibson CEO Henry Juskowitz oversaw an aggressive strategy that expanded Gibson from a guitar company into a lifestyle brand. The company acquired electronics companies that made headphones, speakers, and turntables. Well, the solution to this is pretty easy. All you got to do is go out there and buy a brand new Gibson guitar, right? Right after the break, I'll be playing a song I recorded recently about Farmer Brown's cow. And then I'll be speaking with Henry Roland of Henry and the Invisibles. Don't touch that dial or mouse or iPad or...
Come on down to the peace and tranquility of Rock Castle River Campground on October 12th through the 14th and get your tickets for the 5th annual Moonshiners Ball featuring singer-songwriter James McMurtry, Brooklyn Party Jamsters Turquoise, the soulful sounds of Southern Avenue and American music explorers River Wireless, and more. Escape the city for peace of mind and a full lineup at the 2018 5th Annual Moonshiners Ball by going to themoonshinersball.com.
I was going to a farmer to get my butter and milk. To feed my happy family. She tastes just like the good silk. But the farmer said, "This cow don't like me. Didn't like the way I burned my bread." I ain't gonna let your cow talk to me like that. Well, I
Henry and the Invisibles are a one-man band that have released numerous singles and 2 groundbreaking albums, 2010's One Man Funk Band and 2016's Mosaic. Back in the day, the 90s, Henry Roland was fronting the Austin, Texas funk band known as the Gingerbread Men, a band that mined positive energy on a regular basis right here in Austin, Texas. Now, Henry, what was the transition like from that to what you're doing now?
Oh, wow. So basically from Gingerbread Men, I remember we started kind of focusing a lot on some jazz. So the band kind of branched off into a smaller ensemble of kind of a funk jazz tip. We basically started I think it was around the time when Sam Littman joined the band. He's a kind of a composer around town that was really kind of a jazz influence for us back in the day. I wound up actually rooming with him in New York. He was split in New York, and I thought it was a good time to further my skills as kind of a jazz guitarist. So from Gingerbread Men, basically we broke off into like a smaller ensemble. We call that Concerto Grosso, which by definition is like a small ensemble of improvisational musicians. And so yeah, I started studying jazz, and then I moved to New York. For me, I was studying, taking lessons with lots of greats up there. I took some lessons from Mark Whitfield, Mike Stern, and was hanging around the scene quite a bit, checking out Hiram Bullock quite often.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, I used to jam with Hiram.
Wow.
He used to kind of kick back at this studio on Houston. It was Mermaid Studios. He had like a little basement area that there would be a lot of late night jams, 4 a.m. kind of thing.
Oh yeah.
So basically that's kind of where I went for a while. And then while I was there, of course, I was doing a lot of cafe gigs and smaller trio gigs. And then I kind of also was getting a little burnt on just playing some standards and wanted to do something else. And I wanted to get back into funk. But before that, I experimented a little bit with like a rock trio. And that was a band that I fronted. It was basically the rhythm section of a band that I was in with a female fronted vocalist. Her name is Molly King, and the band was Lotus 33, and it was this kind of just like this kind of psych rock, female fronted rock band. And so we were doing a lot of shows with that, and then I branched off because I wanted to get more gigs. We branched off the trio and called it Star Child, and that was my project. And that was doing pretty well around the Lower East Side, East Village, West Village. We were playing all the pubs, and it was pretty cool. But originally, New York had its toll. It was kind of expensive, and also my roots are in Austin, Texas. So I was in New York for almost 10 years. And
so that's where you went.
Yeah. It was amazing. I made a few records there. I was a studio musician at a place called Threshold Music. So I was getting lots of work through there. I was playing lots of rock bands, mod bands, funk bands, jazz bands, learning skills on bass and guitar predominantly. And it's just an experience that I wouldn't trade for the world. But eventually it's just, New York is kind of beastly in the fact that it was so expensive, and I just got kind of burnt out on it, having been from Texas. So I came back and I brought my rock trio here. So that was kind of what I was doing when I moved back. The bass player had moved from New York, and originally I met some guys in town, some old friends of mine, some old musician friends that took over the gig, and then a bass player eventually from New York moved down, and anyways, as that was going, that was pretty cool. But there were so many problems with personnel, as far as, if you can believe it, in a trio situation. It's a lot of instances where it just wasn't clicking as far as kind of the direction I wanted to go. And when that band disbanded, and I had already gone through 3 bassists for the gig, I kind of decided to myself, oh, well, here's an interesting story. That band got a sponsorship from Sam Ash Music, which was pretty cool. And
yeah,
we were kind of
Electric Avenue, over there on Electric Avenue.
Yeah, so we basically were getting, I think it was like $500 a month to spend at their store. And one of the months we would pass it around, since it was a trio. We figured each one of us would have 4 months out of the year. And one of the months that it came to my side of the yard, I basically got myself a looper. It was a very basic loop pedal.
Now, what year was this? What time are we talking here?
This is probably like 2006, 2007.
Okay, so was this Digitech, or was it? I'm trying to think.
Actually,
yeah,
actually, the first one was Jam Man.
Right,
it's like a
right.
real basic pedal, just one loop, one loft, just like, and it sat in my apartment for about a year before I even really opened the box. It was something that I'd always been fascinated about, but I never really thought. And really, originally, I bought it just to like loop some vocals, or maybe a guitar harmony.
Right.
But when the band disbanded, I decided to kind of try a project that I was really inspired by what Keller Williams was doing at the time with looping.
Mm-hmm.
Because he was playing in theater situations and headlining some festivals, and I was thinking how incredible that was, because he played some guitar. And
can I interject and ask you if you'd ever seen Les Paul play? Because I think he was the first one to do it. Had you ever seen the footage of him? He had attached multi-track to his guitar and was actually looping.
Yeah, I saw something like that on YouTube, but it wasn't until like much later, that I started digging into loopers. I hadn't seen that first. I think at this point, though, I've seen a lot of, like, pretty much if you're looping out there, I'm probably have seen it, because I've just investigated like tons and tons of cats out there, even if they're just beginning. But like,
yeah.
But back then, that was kind of the name that really stood out to me, and and then of course there were others that were doing it. Get Beyond, I think, Eric Driscoll, or Joey Driscoll, and some names that stuck out to me. But like, so I thought to myself, this would be a great opportunity to really pull this pedal out and see what I could do. And I got to be honest with you, the first gig I did was not so great. It was like basically me just, I had a few gigs still booked from my trio, and I convinced each of the talent buyers for each of the venues. There was a place in Corpus. It was Dr. Rockets back then. My buddy Squiz was booking that place, and there were places in San Antonio that I had booked, and a place in Austin.
Yeah.
And I had called all the talent buyers and basically convinced them that this was my new project. And the first couple shows were pretty rough.
It's an instrument in itself. I mean, the looper is, and you're a kung fu master of it. And I have one myself, and you got to hit everything perfectly. I don't know. Maybe you have some advice on that. I'm sure you've got tons, but in the beginning, it's like, man, how am I going to make this work? And then, of course, you got to figure out all the inputs coming in and how you're gonna, run the way it runs through. I'm sure you've simplified everything and gotten to know it. What kind of looper are you using now? How do you loop now?
So now I use a few different loopers at a live scenario. So I've got the RC300, or I'm sorry, the RC30, I believe it is.
Yeah.
The Boss Roland kind of pedal, and that has 3 separate loopers.
Right.
And the way that kind of opened doors was basically, now instead of just one patch where you put a loop and you can take it off, now I can simultaneously create loops that create more of like an A/B or A/B situation in a song, even like a bridge.
Yeah.
And which is more musical, because the one thing that I think the biggest challenge in the beginning was to create a loop that wasn't this like hypnotic drone that like just went on and on forever, that kind of, I find those kinds of loops like just.
Well, you've always been a great songwriter. I mean, from all the way back, and I don't mean that lightly. Your songs, you write songs that should be on the, we can go into, that's a whole left field conversation, but the radio is not friendly to artists nowadays, I should say that. and so, I mean, you've written so many songs with such great hooks, even, the stuff you did with the Gingerbread Man, that should have been played. But now, especially now, I mean, you're writing stuff that I personally can't find a bad song, a song that and I'll be blatantly honest with you, a song where I feel like, I can kind of do without that one. I'm not trying to blow you up here, but I mean, it's every song, and there's not only that, as a musician, myself being a musician, the influences are all there, and they're so subtle. You grab from so many places, and you expand expand on what those people have done. So yeah, I would imagine that you would require a looper that can give you an A, B, and a bridge, for sure.
Well, first of all, thanks. I appreciate that a lot. Honestly, it means a lot that you listen to it. Yeah, so that was basically like the scenario I was in. I just wanted more of like a songwriting challenge. I wanted to really push the envelope because I enjoyed the challenge, but like you said, like I just don't want to, put out like, I'm certainly am not talking negatively on anybody's stuff, but I have been to shows where like somebody would pull out a loop pedal and it just makes you want to leave the room because it just keeps going on and on and on, and that's something I did not want to do. I wanted to kind of like push the envelope for the looper, and so when I got this one, it was totally cool, and then my world definitely changed when I jumped into the machine, which also loops. It has a looping capability, which is basically like the drum pad, the 16 pad, the MPC, if you will, and that kind of opened a lot of different sounds and a lot of different ways to play drums. Because one of the things, I'm sure you probably know, having had a looper, some of these loopers come with like drum patterns, and they're pretty hokey.
Yeah.
And there was no way that I was going to do that in a live scenario, since I'm friends with like some of the best drummers. I didn't want any of that like to be in my set, so I had to figure out a way to do the drums. And like going back to the first show, like I used just a giant water jug for my drums, so like it's got a lot of tones on it. It's got like the bass and the slap for a more of a snare sound, and so I was using a water jug, a bass, and an acoustic guitar. That was my first set.
Wow.
And then I realized that I wanted to get back to the electric guitar, so I was lugging around a 1969 Bassman and basically plugging in my bass and guitar simultaneously, and trying to do drums with my mouth on a microphone.
Yeah.
And so that was cool, but it was feeling like this could definitely, if I could modernize this, it would be great, because I don't want to be, literally dragging around this old vintage amp everywhere. And so eventually it just got into, I started thinking, how am I going to get some electronic drums into the mix? And then that's when I started really exploring the capabilities of MPC options, and I came up with a machine that basically now I've got a MIDI controller with a keyboard, and that has just changed. So the way I've got an MPC set up is it's got 8 different groups, if you will. Well, actually, It's got many, many more, but I set up like groups for shows, and then I've got all these drum kits and different organ sounds and key sounds and effects and samples and those kinds of things plugged into this thing. And then I play the thing like an instrument, because I don't really want to just press play on these things. There are a few songs that are more modern where I'll have like a basic loop running, just so as I can like more seamlessly mix my set. But for the most part, it's pretty much all live. Like I don't really mess around too much with a bunch of pre-recorded stuff.
Yeah, I think that would be boring for you, because you're a player at heart, right? I mean, that, and I just don't want to be pegged as like a DJ or, somebody who's just kind of just like skimming by for a live performance. Well, it's amazing though. You look around and you go to ACL or Coachella's real big on this, and they have the one DJ up there spinning, and they've got this huge elaborate stage show, and 100,000 people in the crowd, and they're just losing their minds out there at 3 a.m. And you're actually the real deal on that. and well, it's hard for people to understand. Just, I don't know, maybe people understand, but to the amount of talent that it takes to be able to play the bass lines that you're playing, to play the guitar lines that you're playing. I mean, you have this one solo that's straight up George Benson. I mean, and it's right up there with it. The way that you sing, the influences in your voice, there's a whole range. Your keyboard playing, that's not plug and play. That's real talent, and that's what amazes me and amazes everybody that listens to you.
Well, thank you so much. I have a lot of respect for those DJs though as well. Because I understand what it takes to produce something that actually gets them to that stage. You know what I mean? It's like if they're playing for 70,000 people, they have spent countless hours in the studio. So I can respect that too. But as far as what I'm doing, it is definitely more of a live scenario. And I feel pretty fortunate to have been like invited to more of those EDM festivals and stuff, just because I'm kind of like the crossover from like live into digital or whatever. So that kind of stuff is something that, you know.
Yeah, I didn't mean to diss people for that. I mean, I appreciate and respect all music, but people are used to now seeing that one guy up there. You know what I mean? And and you are that one guy, but it's all real. You know, it's amazing.
It is funny though, because you said some people, you think most people know, and I would say probably a lot of people understand what's going on, but I still, from time to time, and it's usually when I'm doing more of like a corporate event or something, but somebody will come up to me and ask for like the latest top 40 song, you know, because they seriously, I guess, don't understand that it's a live original set. They think I'm like DJing or something. And I think that, you know, I guess that just comes from like, you know, people seeing live music or whatever their background is. But anyways, so that's something that just basically, when I started doing it, it just grew, it evolved. And I would say that what I found myself doing is, there was a venue in San Antonio on Broadway Street called the Rebar, which is basically my Whiskey Go-Go.
Right, your home base?
Yeah, and I was living in San Antonio at the time because my father was living there, and I was kind of like just honing the craft because I played there every Friday for 6 years. And the set was about a 4-hour-long set. And they told me that I could take breaks, but I rarely did because I just enjoyed like the process of like writing songs. I mean, I wrote so many songs almost on the spot, just ideas.
Yeah.
And then I would watch how the crowd would react, and if they reacted well, then I would bring it back, and if they didn't, then I would probably just toss it. And
that's a laboratory. That is a laboratory.
It was extremely educational. I mean, you know, it was something that is invaluable, and I think that a lot of bands up and coming spend a lot of time in their garages or in their bedrooms or whatever, and I think that it's important to get yourself onto like a real raw live scenario so that you can kind of see where you're, you know, doing well or screwing up or whatever, and that's kind of what I was.
There's an energy there too, definitely. You know, there's an energy that you feed off of, yeah.
And it started off with like 12 people the first Friday, to the point where there was so many people in the venue that it flooded. Like one of the last shows I played there, we actually call it the Great Flood because there were too many people there, and the pipes broke because it was actual 3 inches of water in the whole venue. It was just nuts. I mean, and that's when we realized, or you know, I realized that I had to kind of move on because it just wasn't. Probably wasn't the safest thing to do anymore, and also I had kind of outgrown the place.
Right.
I've been thinking of drinking out of this funky cup.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Probably not a bad idea. Go ahead. Give it a try.
I've got a ton of singles that I'm working on right now, and I'm just right now I'm kind of taking on the whole idea of put out a lot of music.
Well, the game has changed.
Game has changed, exactly, and I just feel that it's important to just keep pushing myself into like, and I'm not really giving myself any rules this time. I'm just really just writing the kind of music that I enjoy. And actually right now I'm writing a lot of kind of fun music. I would consider this kind of party music. I just, you know, Prince wrote a lot of like 1999s and Kiss and everything, and then he's got his Purple Rain. You know what I mean? So it's like you really have to just throw it all into what becomes the conglomerate or mosaic, right? So that's what the album is called, Mosaic. It was like basically this mosaic of who I am. So yeah, I got really lucky. As soon as the 2010 release came out, I got really lucky because I walked into a Kinko's and I was like going to be making a show flyer, and this girl came up to me and she said, "Hey, you're Henry from Henry and the Invisibles and blah, blah, blah. Hey, my brother is having a battle of the bands and I think you'd be perfect for it." And I was like, "Well, I'm a one-man band." And she said, "Well, yeah, but, I think you'd be perfect for it because the winner of the thing gets to open up for Ghostland Observatory at Jack's backyard," or I think it was, I can't even remember the name, but it was this huge place with like a 4,000 capacity. And Ghostland Observatory was already slotted, to play. And basically the winner was going to be the opener. And I got lucky. I went to the Battle of the Bands, and my fans came out full force and wound up winning that Battle of the Bands. And so one of my first strong shows, as soon as that record came out, was playing for 4,000 people. And
wow.
It was like night and day. I had basically had the concept, just finished this EP, was raring to go. Here we go. Next thing you know, I'm playing in front of all these people, and I think immediately, I felt pretty blessed about it because, the name was out all of a sudden, and it was one of those things. And from then, I just kind of catapulted off of that experience. And you know how it is. It's like once you have the taste, you just want more. I just wanted to really get onto that main stage, and so I've kept that hunger throughout my career. But with this particular project, it was like, wow, this is just me. I mean, there is nothing holding me back. I really don't have any band issues or
going back to your New York experience, like you learned in boot camp how hard it can be, how much rent is, how much you got to divvy up the money. Down here in Austin, they don't pay a whole lot for a band. It's like you're lucky to walk away with $20. But it's not about the money because people that make the kind of music you're making, it's not about the money. It's about the music. But set that aside, I would assume that as a solo artist, a solo band, that you're doing okay, and that you kind of have the pick of the litter, especially since and you're still growing. How does that feel?
Oh, it's incredible. I mean, it really is just a blessing, and I'm just so happy that it turned out the way it did, because as far as like artistic development, I mean, I'm back to my roots of like funk, dance music, and soul music, and I'm constantly like, like this past week, for example, I decided to challenge myself in a different way where, I a lot of times when we're on the road, I don't get a lot of practice time. It's like show after show. And so now, like this week I had off. So it was like basically 8 hours of practice on guitar, 8 hours of practice on bass, 8 hours of practice on keys, alternating throughout the week. And then I was spending time like focusing on production. And, it's just all these things that I can do without having to make a schedule or anything like that. So it's been incredible.
kissy like you're missing, never dissing electricity. I just wanna turn you up and turn you in, now turn you on. Spin it over like a lover, say what's up now just for fun. It's a chapter that you'll have to want to live in love and laughter. I'm gonna sing it strong so that we can get along. Time is here now, it's gone and comes again now on and on. Watch it, chase it, come on, face it. We can live in love, your future. Woo! Don't do what you want to do. Your future, yeah, got to do what you want. Your future, woo! Don't do what you want to do. Your future, yeah, got to do what I want. If you love and never solve it, don't you think you're much above
As far as the rewards and returns, of course, I mean, that's obvious. I mean, it's just you, so you can really, focus on what I'm going to do next. If I want to put out another 45, I can do that this next month. So it's been great. And I honestly, I love playing with musicians, and I always have. You remember the Gingerbread Men? I mean, sometimes our shows would be 13 pieces deep, and I enjoy still playing with musicians. Quite often, I'll hang out with some friends and we'll play. And if I get to a jam session,
do you ever sit in with, say Bootsy, or do you ever get pulled up, or you end up on tour, maybe at a festival where you get pulled up on stage just to play an instrument?
Well, Bootsy is somebody who I'm trying to actually get in touch with. Right
oh
now.
no.
I have yet to play with him, but yeah, for some of the some of the big funk bands and stuff. I mean, normally it's usually after party stuff. So I'm not the kind of musician that hangs around the side of the stage unless asked, because it's just something that I just kind of, I guess, grew up with. It's kind of my thing. There are a lot of musicians that do want to sit in with me during the show, and unless I know you, it's not really going to happen, because I don't know. I mean,
you got a lot going on, man.
The show is pretty orchestrated, and also there's a technical side to it too. Like I'm running through in-ears, so it's like a lot of times I don't even hear what they're doing because I'm not on the monitors. There isn't a mic set up or whatever. But that said, though, I love jamming with artists and musicians, and really in the near future, I'm going to be doing some collaborations. And I'll keep that a secret for now, who it is and everything. But there's a lot of stuff on my Mosaic album, though. I got Jeff Daisy, who plays with Leon Bridges and Willie Nelson, and he played the sax solo on Whoa. I've throughout my life, I had Frosty on Soul Shaker. But that's Barry Frosty Smith, Soul Shaker, rest in peace.
Yep.
And I love playing with artists, but as far as me in the studio doing my own thing, touring, everything, I'm glad where I'm at, and I don't think I'm gonna focus on trying to put together another band for the rest of my career as far as this goes. So
amazing just how much, from a musician standpoint, just how loose everything is you do. Because it's not like, okay, I got to put this part here, and I got to, it's like, I'm going to drop into this, I'm going to, oh no, here we go. We're going to this part, and it's just like, it's just like a live band, it's the pocket is there. The interaction is there with the audience. It's the reason that I'm so happy to have you on the show is that you really are a pioneer, and that's not only do you represent old school Austin and the amount of great bands that are here and have been here, and there's so many great talented artists here, but you are a pioneer that represents Austin, Texas, and I just really appreciate you joining me on the show, and I hope to talk to you again real soon, Henry. And
oh man, I appreciate it. Thank you.
And just please just keep on doing what you're doing, because we all love
it. You got it, man.
All right,
you got it.
Take care, brother. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you. Thank you, John.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Peace.
You can find Henry and the Invisibles at henryinvisible.com, and he's also on Spotify. And you can also find us, The Blah Blah Show, at BlahBlahShow.com on the HC Universal Network. This has been John Bound. I'll see you at Blah Blah Show number 7.